we have a special guest with us. If there was the man to go to regarding the history of the church along with the Philippines, it would be Professor Xiao Chua.
Makasaysayang hapon po sa inyo, and to all the brethren of the Iglesia ni Cristo, happy anniversary.
Thank you very much. First things first, I just want to ask personally, what would be the right term for the elaborate ornament you have on you?
Well, I just wear this because it's my favorite, because this came from our Cordilleran brothers in the Kalinga, and also this one is from Bontoc, also from the north. And these are the designs of the pre-colonial linglingo of our ancestors. Remember that as Filipinos, we are multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multilingual, and multi-religious. But our commonality as a people would be the culture before all the influences came, and that is the culture of our early Filipinos, the Austronesians.
Is that
so these
more
are the symbols.
than 100 years old?
Thousands.
Wow. So let's just go back.
1,000 or 2,000.
Maybe we go back 100 years, 104 years specifically.
Yes.
If you could describe, I guess, the environment in which the church was seated in 1914?
Well, I guess I have to say that the church came out at the right time, at the right situation, as it was willed by God. I mean, you know, if Ka Felix Manalo continued the Church of Christ in around 60 years before that, he might have been executed like Hermano Puli.
Oh, wow.
You know, remember that Hermano Puli founded a religious organization, a kapatiran, and the Spaniards were bothered by it. It was a Catholic kapatiran. It was not a new religion, but they were so bothered by it that only Indios can be the members of that, that they slaughtered the members of that kapatiran, and they executed Hermano Puli. They cut his body into pieces. So what happened was that the time of the formation of the church in the Philippines was a time of change and a time of historical change. It was a product of historical change and the right circumstances. So for example, Ka Felix was born in 1886. That was 10 years before the Philippine Revolution. He had an uncle who was a priest, and before that, during that time, the priest won't allow the Bible to be read by everybody. So what happened was, he still was able to sneak out and read the Bible for himself and look at the differences of teachings of the Catholic Church at that time and the Bible. And so he began questioning and forming in his mind what's the true church for him. So what happened was, the Americans came. And when the Americans came, what happened was, there was such an opening of, shall we say, religious freedom, because the Americans were tolerant of other religions. So what happened was, this was the time when Ka Felix began his journey to search the Bible, and the Bibles were distributed already during that time all throughout the Philippines, and was translated also into Tagalog. So this began I think the right circumstances, the proper time made the church blossom. Of course, not without difficulties, because remember that at that time, a lot of people found some of the church's teachings as awkward. So that's why some of them, and no, of course, when there's a new religion or when there's a new faith that people think is, you know, against their beliefs, there's a reaction to that, and of course a lot of people suffered. The Church of Christ suffered persecutions, but eventually it was able to have a role in our country's history.
Yes. So the origins of the Iglesia ni Cristo, we can see how it's played a huge role in the history of the Philippines, especially in nation building. So based on your research about the Iglesia ni Cristo, how can you see how the INC has contributed to that nation building?
I'm wearing this for a purpose, because I am actually, my message to a lot of people is that the Iglesia ni Cristo, yes, it is a biblical, Bible-based religion, but it also has, because the Ka Felix came from the Philippines, and it is inevitable that the context of this religion, even if it has spread worldwide, would be Filipino. So for example, the pre-colonial ancestors, they had the sandugo The sandugo is the formation of the community by the datus who will form alliances so that they would build a stronger community. The bayan is built by the sandugo. And sandugo, the ritual, means one blood. And one blood means kapatiran, brotherhood.
Yes.
So remember that the kapatiran is also the kapatiran that is the concept of Hermanopolis organization. Same as the concept of Andres Bonifacio's Katipunan. We are all brothers in in this organization, the Katipunan. So when Ka Felix formed the church here in the Philippines, he was able to add that element of kapatiran. That's why you call yourselves kapatid.
Yes, brother,
and there's a strong band of brotherhood, sisterhood. This is very Filipino, not just within among yourselves, but also to your fellow men. For example, there's Lingap sa Mamamayan, there's the Felix Y. Manalo Foundation that was recently established, not just to help people around the country, but to help people around the world when there are catastrophes. So things like this make the church, in a way, contribute not just to the Philippines, but to humanity. That's one, the concept of kapatiran. The other one is the concept of leadership. I'm looking at the concept of leadership, the tagapamahalang pangkalahatan. In a way, he is a datu. Not as an absolute leader, but someone who gives ginhawa, kapanatagan, karangalan to the bayan. During the time of our ancestors, it is still the spirit that animates the kapatiran. Because I also understand this, that even during the time of our ancestors, it is not necessary that if you have the datu and you have the son of the datu, they will pass the throne to you. You have to prove yourself worthy. And in the leadership of the Iglesia ni Cristo, it passed on the descendants or the family of Ka Felix Manalo to his son Ka Erdi, and then to the grandson of Ka Felix, Ka Eduardo. But this is not automatic. You remember that both Ka Erdi and Ka Eduardo, they were elected by the ministers of the church, meaning there is a democracy in the sense that just like our ancestors, you have to choose their leaders when time comes for transition, but also they have to prove themselves. The family, those who are passing on, the leadership would pass on them. They have to prove themselves as worthy successors of leadership. So I think that this is very similar to how we, in the pre-colonial days, were able to have our leadership and how to have order and in many ways harmony in our bayan.
Yes.
So and then the third one that I'm always pointing out is the use of language. The use of language, because of course we are talking in English because we are international.
Yes.
But the main language, of course, of the Church of Christ, the Iglesia ni Cristo, is Filipino, Tagalog.
Yes.
And this is important because even if there are members of the church in other countries, the ministers, for example, I believe, they have to learn Tagalog. They have to learn Tagalog, the language of the last messenger.
Yes.
And if you're going to look at it, this, in a way, exported our language from and our culture, not just language. Language, there's culture. It exported our language and our culture, Filipino culture, from the Philippines worldwide. It now had Filipino had become, the Iglesia ni Cristo had become exporters, one of the main exporters of Filipino culture. Wow. So if you're going to look at that, even if Ka Eduardo, for example, goes to another country to have their services, his services, he gets translated. He will talk in Tagalog, but he will be translated in other languages. So we are not afraid to say, this is a Filipino church, and we want to speak in the language of the last messenger. So and of course, when you have special words, for example, like diakono, handog, paghahandog, bautismo, and all of that, there is a special band that is created to those who use that language to have a more coherent cohesive and unified bond. So what I'm saying here is, if you're going to look at the Datu leadership, the concept of kapatiran, and the spread of language, the spread of language and culture, these are I think the three main points to look at the Iglesia ni Cristo and his role in nation building, and how we, for example, nation is when we have one heart,
yes,
and one mind. We have a national sentiment to be together. We identify ourselves with each other. So when we have that, you become a nation. Now, we as Filipinos, if you're going to look at how fragmented a lot of us are, despite the nation-building project started by Jose Rizal and Andres Bonifacio, there's still difficulties in nation-building. But the Iglesia ni Cristo was able to have their own identity, their Filipino culture, but also their own distinct version of it, and they are able to export it to the world. This is what we should be doing as Filipinos. So I'm saying that we should look at the example of the Iglesia ni Cristo in how we, as a nation, can also try to find our unity despite diversity, find our common symbols, find the things that unite us, and we work together as kapatiran ng mga mamamayang Pilipino, just as what you are doing today.